Hello everyone, I hope you're doing very well. This is week 7. We are almost halfway through the semester. Excellent stuff all around. Now, we have a few things to take care of. We did have that quiz, and I'm evaluating those now. And overall though, quite good overall. Very nice, nicely done. Now, we're going to have to start having some bigger projects come down the line, but those won't be for a little while. But we're going to have some, small homeworks and things like that. But today, we're going to talk about introductions. And this will be quite nice. Let's take a look. Excuse me. A good introduction gets the audience interested in the rest of your presentation. So, just like everything, a strong introduction will help hook your audience into paying attention to everything. On YouTube videos, they say you have 3 seconds to keep your audience. 3 seconds. And so you have to hit them hook, and that's why so many videos start with loud noises, because that's what kids like. But it is effective, to say the least. And so we're going to take a look at some different attention grabbers and different ways of introducing yourself for presentations, for public speaking, things like that. First one is employing attention grabbers. And these are loud, bold statements. And this is, you need to say this loud and strong and confident voice. And then you'll need to prove it through the rest of the presentation, the rest of the speech. And I have a couple examples and say, what you do with every day isn't important. What's important is how you do it. Or, it is the struggle, the hardship that makes us stronger. So here's an example. Here, you can see how it starts. It's an old YouTube video.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it. How do you feel?
We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take this anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Network News Hour with Sybil the Soothsayer. Jim Webbing, and here sits the Emma's Truth Department. Miss Matahari and her skeletons in the closet. Tonight, another segment of Vox Populi. And starring the mad prophet of the airways, Howard Beale.
George Ruddy died today. Edward George Ruddy was the chairman of the board of the Union Broadcasting Systems, and he died at 11 o'clock this morning of a heart condition, and woe is us. We're in a lot of trouble.
That's his introduction, where he's yelling and he's saying, woe is us, because a man died. And then for the rest of it, he's going to explain why that's important. Why is it important that a man died? And why is that woe to us? So, 240p. Oh my goodness, this is 240p. This is a very old video.
A mad prophet.
George Ruddy died today. Edward George Ruddy was the chairman of the board of the Union Broadcasting Systems, and he died at 11 o'clock this morning of a heart condition, and woe is us. We're in a lot of trouble. So, a rich little man with white hair died. What has that got to do with the price of rice, right? And why is that woe to us? Because you people And 62 million other Americans are listening to me right now because less than 3% of you people read books. Because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Because the only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube is the gospel, the ultimate revelation. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. This tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people. And that's why woe is us that Edward George Ruddy died. Because this company is now in the hands of CCA, the Communication Corporation of America. There's a new chairman of the board, a man called Frank Hackett, sitting in Mr. Ruddy's office on the 20th floor. And when the 12th largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be peddled for truth on this network? So you listen to me. Listen to me. Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So if you want the truth, go to God. Go to your gurus. Go to yourselves. Because that's the only place you're ever going to find any real truth. But man, you're never going to get any truth from us. We'll tell you anything you want to hear. We lie like hell. We'll tell you that Kojak always gets the killer and that nobody ever gets cancer in Archie Bunker's house. And no matter how much trouble the hero is in, don't worry, just look at your watch. At the end of the hour, he's going to win. We'll tell you any shit you want to hear. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
All right. That's the whole speech. It's the movie is called Network. It's a very good movie. It's from the 1970s, and unfortunately it was very accurate in how they saw television and movies and entertainment go in the direction they're going with. But at the time it was satire, but now it's not. But you see, his whole style is loud and boisterous, so he uses the loud, attention-grabbing statements, which is one method of making introductions for your speech. Another way is adding a quote, usually a famous person, and this can help establish credibility or the importance of your presentation. It's very important that if you include a quote, that it's something that actually ties in, that's related to the topic that you're going to talk about. And also, don't make it have too long. Don't have it be... If the quote is too long, then you lose its impact. It's also important that you mention where the quote came from. Who said it? What is it from? Because otherwise, if you don't give citation, don't give credit on who made the quote, then what's the purpose of the quote? So, for example, we could say, Sam Walton once said, "You can't just keep doing what works one time. Everything around you is changing. To succeed, stay out in front of change." And that's the quote from Sam Walton. He made the company Walmart, which is a very big store chain in the United States and Canada. And so, it relates to things, and we see how it relates this is a message I want you all to remember as we implement new ways to improve customer service. So the quote directly relates to the content of the speech, of the presentation. Here's another example from a long time ago. This is this man. He was trying to be president of the United States, and he opens with a quote. Now, for the last video, we watched pretty much the whole thing. This we can't watch. It's 30 minutes long.
Balancing the budget and reforming government.
Ross Perot, he was an oil businessman, and he made a lot of money, and so he wanted to be president, but he didn't run as a Democrat or Republican. He ran by himself. So to get the television news shows, and this was before the internet, so television news wouldn't talk about him. So the way he got on TV is that he bought time. He paid for 30 minutes of TV time, and he talked to people. And so, yeah, he paid to be on TV, and he explained what he thought. But we'll see how he starts.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about how to solve the problems that we defined that face our country. I think we can come to the conclusion immediately with this quote. History repeats itself. The budget should be balanced. The treasury should be refilled. Public debt should be reduced. The arrogance of public officials should be controlled. These are not new words. Cicero said these words over 2,000 years ago, but certainly they apply to our country today. Anytime we do anything, we try to learn from experience. We learned a lot from the first program.
So he opens with a quote talking about the problems of government and, you know, the general suggestions, the general solutions for the problems of government. And he quotes Cicero from 2,000 years before, saying that, you know, these aren't new problems. These are constant problems, but we have them again today, and we need to fix them today. And he spends the rest of the 28 minutes and 32 seconds talking about those problems and how to try to fix those problems. But yeah, that was a long time ago. A third way of introducing yourself is establishing credibility. Basically introducing your credentials, who you are. This is very helpful if you're giving specific advice of your idea, or you're talking about a certain subject. If, for example, there's someone giving a speech about Korean history, then they should, you think, be someone who studied Korean history a lot. And they might have to be a professor of history, of Korean history. Things like that. It'd be quite helpful. If they're just, for example, they're going to talk about, you know, Lee Sun-shin, but they're not a historian. There's someone actually who's never really, you know, they watched a movie about Lee Sun-shin, but otherwise they don't know anything. Then it becomes much more difficult to believe them. Or even if they've studied a lot, if they don't have the history, the credibility, the certification, it's difficult to believe them. And I'll give you an example of this. This is a very long speech by Satoru Iwata. He was the president of Nintendo for some time, and he establishes credibility in a very nice, succinct way. And I think this is a very good speech another way, because he gave this speech at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco years ago now. He passed away several years ago. And you can hear his pronunciation. He's not a fluent English speaker. You know, he doesn't need English every day. He speaks Japanese. That's what he needed. But he does speak English fairly well. But his pronunciation is not perfect. You don't need perfect pronunciation to be understood or to be successful. But I should be able to. Let me make sure it gets up.
Prepare, Scar. I am a corporate president.
Oh, excuse me. Get that guy away.
Thank you very much, Jamil. On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer.
So he gives his credibility on his business card. He's the corporate president. He is the president of Nintendo. In his mind, in his head, his brain, he's a game developer. That was his job. He made games. He developed games for Nintendo. But in his heart, he is a gamer. That's who he is. And so that established credibility, and he's going to, his speech is an hour long. Obviously, we're not going to watch that all, but he proceeds to tell a story also about how when he first he loved to play games, and the first game he made was on the calculator that, gosh darn it, never mind. But the first game he made was in middle school on the calculator, and it was a baseball game that used the numbers. So he loves games and he loves making games, and that establishes who he is, and that's credibility. So even now that he's a corporate president, he's the the businessman, but he still has passion for their core business, which makes Nintendo a bit different than Sony or Microsoft, for example, because they're not game companies first. Another method we have here is asking a rhetorical question to show presentation's points. Rhetorical questions are things that we don't really expect the audience to answer. And should be here. This is President Obama talking about immigration. And immigration has always been a big issue. And it's a big issue again right now. And we can see and hear his rhetorical questions.
Are we a nation that tolerates the hypocrisy of a system where workers who pick our fruit and make our beds never have a chance to get right with the law? Or are we a nation that gives them a chance to make amends, take responsibility, and give their kids a better future? Are we a nation that accepts the cruelty of ripping children from their parents' arms? Or are we a nation that values families and works together to keep them together? Are we a nation that educates the world's best and brightest in our universities only to send them home to create businesses in countries that compete against us? Or are we a nation that encourages them to stay and create jobs here, create businesses here, create industries right here in America? That's what this debate is all about.
So those are all rhetorical questions. Guys, you're not expected to answer about them. And we see here on the screen as are we a nation that tolerates the hypocrisy of a system where workers who pick our fruit and make our beds never have a chance to get right with the law? Or are we a nation that gives them a chance to make amends, take responsibility, and give their kids a better future? Now, you as individuals, which way are you supposed to say? What are you supposed to... If you had to answer, which one do you have to say? You have to say, the first one, obviously, that's nice. But it's a rhetorical question. You don't really need... Obama wasn't expecting an answer. It's for the debate. Goes on to say, are we a nation that accepts the cruelty of ripping children from their parents' arms? Or are we a nation that values families and works together to keep them together? Works together to keep them together, huh? Now, I don't know if you've heard on the news, but the answer is this, the first one. We do accept the cruelty of ripping children from their parents' arms, but it's more complicated than that. But for his rhetoric, for his speech, this is very effective. And then he moves on. Are we a nation that educates the world's best and brightest in our universities only to send them home to great businesses in countries that compete against us? So, or are we a nation that encourages them to stay and create jobs here, create business here, create industries right here in America? That's what this debate is all about. So these are all rhetorical questions to frame the debate, to frame the conversation a certain way. So he's trying to make it frame that he wants the first ones, or the nice sounding ones, and people who oppose him want the not nice sounding ones. So this forces people into certain arguments or certain frames of mind. So these are very effective for introducing topics where you're trying to persuade someone. If you're teaching a lesson, then no, it's not really important. If you're trying to persuade people to think a certain way and then act a certain way, politically, voting wise, or public policy wise, then yes, you'll use rhetorical questions. But for teaching a lesson, students aren't going to respond to rhetorical lessons, especially with subjects like math or science. It doesn't work as well. But for like social studies, yes. A few things is list a few noteworthy facts to emphasize your topic. These should be wowing things. So these are things that your audience won't know but will find thought-provoking and relevant, and try to keep it simple. And the example is that everyone around you might say they like a dark roast coffee, but did you know that only 25% of people actually prefer it? This has to do with the idea that people want to look smart and sophisticated, and black coffee, dark roast coffee, which is the bitter flavor, that's what people say they like, because that's what sophisticated people like. But you go to Starbucks, especially Starbucks in America, a lot of people get very sweet drinks, get the milkshake, frappuccinos. So what people say they like and what people actually like can be different things. So we go back to Ross Perot, and this should be lined up.
Over 2,000 years ago.
Whoa, that's even worse. The sound quality isn't. But what Ross Perot did, he liked using charts and showing where money comes from and where money goes for the U.S. government. This sounds like a very basic thing, but back then people didn't actually know where money went and where money came from. So yeah, he lectured people about where basically the U.S. got their money and where they spent money, and it was a lot of it. So he used charts, nice, happy, boring charts to show where things are.
Discussed before in terms of where we are, then we'll go to the solution. We're $4.1 trillion in debt. That's a staggering burden to pass to our children. It's unconscionable.
So he's using charts and information just to say we're spending too much money. We need to stop spending so much money, and showing where we can cut, where we can, reduce. So he uses charts. This can be boring though, so be careful of that. Another method is sharing a short story to make the presentation relatable. This is very, very, very common. Personal anecdotes or story about other people can be good for framing devices or introductions. So we have an example here with Steve Jobs, and this is the commencement speech for Stanford University in 2005. But he tells 3 stories to help that were all very important in his life as a person and as a business person. But the first one has to do with him going to university. And as you might know, he dropped out of university, and he explains why.
I'm honored to be with you today, and this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why'd I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay.
So he goes on to explain a fair bit, but he does explain that, yeah, that it's a framing device at a college graduation. He's explained how he quit college and how that affected his future. And he goes on to explain quite a bit more. So I'll include these videos so you can watch them on your own, but we don't need to sit and watch them together. It'd be a bit silly. So for this week, there'll be more supplementary videos to watch and take care of. And then also we'll need to watch about what we're doing for our big projects were coming up, but they won't come up for another couple of weeks. So please make sure to watch out on eClass for class news, and we'll see each other again next time.